Perfect. Well, thank you everyone again for joining us. This is our 5th book club of the year. We have one more coming up in November. So I will follow up with actually a new date for that because that's on Veterans Day. So we'll go ahead and switch that. And I just want to say thank you so much to Maggie Jacobs for joining us in our Q&A for the first half of book club this evening. I think we're going to have a great conversation. And I am Kelsey Mendenhall, and I'm an executive assistant for Hims and Hers. And actually, since we have such an intimate group, why don't everyone go ahead and introduce yourself. Stephanie, would you like to start?
Sure, thank you. I'm Stephanie Blackwell. I'm the executive assistant for the CEO and the COO of the Financial Health Network. We're a non-for-profit in Chicago.
Thanks. What about you, Whitney?
Hi, everybody. I'm Whitney Kelso. I am an administrative assistant at Anthem for a staff vice president for engineering and platform services. And I'm just so glad to be here. Thank you.
So excited to have you. And Miss Tracy.
Tracy Harris, executive assistant to the president and CEO of a DEI&J consulting firm. Organization's been remote since 1999 when it was started. So I am in New York, but our staff is spread across the US.
Awesome. So you're like a veteran to this remote life we're living in.
Well, I don't have the anxiety of being called back. There is no callback. So it's me and my desk.
That's great. That's awesome. And Maggie, thank you so much for joining us. I've had the pleasure of meeting you before in Tribu with Phoenix Norman. So I'm so excited to chat about your book because I know a few things that we had talked about were in your book. So it's really excited to share that with our broader community here at BASE. Well, since we have a small group, I had a few questions prepared, but do you guys want to kind of kick off some questions and then I'll filter in as we go?
I don't have a question, but I'd just like to give a heartfelt thanks to you, Maggie. I watched a seminar you did, and you said something that has changed my professional career. And it was the phrase that just because you're not invited to a meeting doesn't mean you're not welcomed, and that ask to attend. And so I did that at my current company, and I have since been put on the leadership team. So again, something else you said, not just being in the room, I'm actually at the table and participating in decision making. And it literally was that statement that you made.
Wonderful.
So thank you.
Congratulations, Tracy, and thanks so much for sharing that. I love it.
And I'd like to tag on that too. I was the date snuck up on me so quickly that I had to email BASE and say, hey, what book are we doing again? I forgot. And so I read it this week, and that resonated with me as well. And it was funny because I have access to my executive's emails. And so I think I registered for something from one of his emails. And so I'm one of the culture champions, and only the leaders and the CAO are part of this. And so for a second there, when I joined the meeting tonight, because we had a culture meeting tonight, and this really high up guy is in there along with all of these other vice presidents and stuff. And then there's an administrative assistant. And I'm thinking, you know what? No, I've got a right to be here too. I am the one who makes all of these all associates meetings. I am the one who put the culture conversations together. I have a right to be here too. And then I just like my voice was heard. And I'm like, yes. Ooh, wow, that's powerful.
Go Whitney. Amazing.
It's amazing. Well,
I love the book. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kelsey.
Please, Stephanie, please go ahead. Love to.
I was entertained and motivated and encouraged from beginning to end. I really loved it. I love, how transparent you were and all that you shared. And what's amazing about how this has linked up is in my position now, we're kind of doing that in my operations team where we're discovering like how we are as human beings and how that shows up in work and how we can support each other and understand how we think and work, and and understanding that being inclusive is not only gender and race, but it's learning styles and communication styles and background, like why do I feel insecure in these situations? Like, where did that come from, right? So I'll let Kelsey ask her questions because I could probably go on forever, and she may ask some that will answer everything I got. So,
No worries. Thank you guys all so much for sharing. First question I kind of wanted to kick off with you, Maggie, is this idea in your book, or kind of the premise of the EA role and your perspective is, my role as an admin is to help my executive reach their next level. So with that in mind, could you kind of give us some tips on how you got into that mindset, and like, how do you think it would be helpful for others to get into that mindset as well?
So I initially got into it, and you mentioned her earlier, pre-recording. I heard Robin Guido speak at a conference in 2013. And for those of you not on the call, Robin Guido is the executive administrator to Parker Harris, co-founder of Salesforce. And so they were doing their strategic planning, KPI, OKR. In this case, Salesforce calls it the V2 MOM, which is the vision, values, methods, owners, and metrics. I hope I got that right. And so she was doing her V2 MOM with Parker. And then I think her initial steps were save the company money, book travel in the most efficient manner, just things that read like a job description. And Parker said to her, this is great, yes, and your role is to help me reach my next level. And so pre-hearing that, I would just go through the motions. I vividly remember just thinking, is this all there is? My brain's going to atrophy. I freaking hate my job. And when I heard that, we all have those moments. And when I heard that, I was like, yes, that's it. Like, this role is one that's to be of service, to be of contribution. And I'm not saying you should by any means be a servant. It's being of service and being a servant are quite different, but to be able to help elevate another human being to reach their next level, where you're not seeking the limelight or seeking the validation, but to truly be there selflessly to help them, their direct reports, their organization reach their next level. That's when I really got it. And there's so much to be gleaned when you really understand that. And that's what's brought me to where I am. It's putting others first.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. My next kind of question for you. So right now we're seeing this crazy market with like the great resignation going on,
Yeah.
And a lot of employers really having to struggle to get talent, which is great on the talent side. I love the part in your book, and I think you told me this in person once, about when you met with Jason for one of the first times that Sunday before you're supposed to start your new job. You brought him the book, and you brought like a deck, a PowerPoint or a presentation of like what you guys could do in the role together and what that could look like. And so I would love to talk to you more about with the current market and people maybe looking for new roles. How do you see kind of taking those tools with you into remote kind of interviewing versus being able to be in person and being able to see the nonverbal cues a little bit better and read the energy a little more than you would over a screen?
Yep. So interviewing remotely, I haven't done it. I can say that publicly, Jason, if you're listening. But it's, you are responsible for the energy you bring into a room, and any executives that's astute to that may mirror that and or help to guide the conversation, right? So if you're feeling insecure or stressed, if any executive worth their salt is going to pick up on that, and we'll try to guide you back. But in terms of you interviewing, if you're looking for a new role, I would encourage you to Google, to look up things, best practices. If I can give you specific tips in showing up, how to do that virtually. And then in terms of putting your best foot forward, look at the camera, right? Instead of looking at the faces, I want to look at all of you and make eye contact. But if you're meeting with another human being, specifically interviewing, look at the camera lens, right? Because other people are looking at the screen well. And so you want to create that sense of eye contact, because we don't have that. A lot of calls that I'm on, I often see people, their screens are like this because they're sitting there typing and they're not cognizant of it. It's like, hey, what are you doing? I'm right here or here, which is obviously inappropriate. I won't do that for you. But center it. And you don't need your face centered here either, right? Because it's kind of like the floating head. So you actually, and I'm executive coach who's worked with Jason, said you want your forehead right at the camera lens. So I don't know if you guys can see that. I don't know if I went down a massive rabbit hole just now or if that's helpful. You may have to get me back on track.
Right. Just for daily meetings, that's great. With the forehead tip, I would have never thought of that.
I see so many. I'm like, what are you doing? Can you fix your camera, please?
That's amazing. Can we talk more about the deck you left behind with Jason, or if you were to like interview again, the deck you would leave behind for
Yeah,
a potential
absolutely.
CEO that you
I
would?
didn't actually leave it behind. He has to keep it. And I was like, I don't, that's weird, but okay. So it was so I haven't actually shared it publicly, by the way, because I couldn't have anticipated being here with you all today 5 years ago, or whenever that was, 4 years ago. And so it wasn't my work. It was somebody, and I don't remember whose it was. If you're out there, thank you for creating that deck that I repurposed. But it was an EA's role in change management. And it wasn't necessarily specific to onboarding a new CEO, but it was every org has change, and it has meaningful change that, just is tumultuous and it's uncomfortable if you make it so, or you don't know how to navigate it. And I thought, wow, this is something we need. And mind you, I'd never been a part of a new CEO org restructure or any of that. So it was new for me too, but I was like, this stuff sounds great. I'm going to share this with Jason. And so it was navigating change management. And so everybody has a target on your back. And if you don't know that now, right? Everybody's being evaluated, and it's an opportunity, one, for you to either step up and show up, or, and it's okay to leave. But if you want to leave, like, leave. Don't try to fake it. Just like go start your next chapter. Like, break the shackles that have you, right? Everybody deserves that freedom. And if you're uncomfortable or don't like your current role, talk through it first. Communication is key. Don't just run away. I've done that many times. But create the opportunity to have those conversations. And if it's not for you, move on. And I went on a tangent again, but back to the deck. You get to be a champion of culture. You get to remind people that with change comes opportunity. It's a massive opportunity for you to really step into something in your current role or beyond. You get to architect your future. You get to write that chapter. You get to say, hey, these are my strengths. Let me show you what I can do. Don't just accept the norm and say, this is what I've been doing. This is what I want to be doing. Unless you're content there. But really initiate those conversations, because what's the worst that can happen? They can say, no, I'm not interested. But if you don't have those conversations, you don't know what can happen. It's the same thing that Sheryl Sandberg says, you don't get if you don't ask. And so you can't just assume they're mind readers. I still do that on occasion, right? I'm not perfect, but you've got to consistently be communicating, because they're not thinking about us, right? I always equate the role to this. So picture two concentric circles, right? The Venn diagram. To us, our executives are this big, massive circle, right? We're this itty bitty little tiny thing. And that's the truth for us in our lens. But for them, we're this tiny little bit, they're not thinking about us. If anything, it's like, oh, they've got this, they've got my back, you've created that relationship, but they're not thinking about your future. They're not thinking about your advancement. And so you've got to be your own advocate for what are you doing now and what do you want to be doing in the future.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing. I think that's so poignant, especially now, since people are able, I feel like roles are changing a little bit, especially in the EA world. The role is more advanced. It's not just calendaring. It's not just doing expenses. It's the stuff with EQ that goes along with it. And I love your philosophy with professional development. And I know you've done a ton of stuff with Tony Robbins and all those amazing things. How are you? So with now, I don't know if you guys are fully remote with your company, but how are you kind of viewing networking in this new kind of hybrid remote world we're in? I kind of created the book club at the beginning of this year to network a little bit more, because I really missed that interaction with other EAs. But what have you been doing, or what do you see happening, or what would you recommend? It's kind of 3-part question there for you.
So I was lamenting to myself, like, God, I really miss events. I'm not doing any training. I'm not doing any development. And I'm like, well, that's not true. I've actually done 3 Tony Robbins events this year, which I forget, but I'm always active. And so I say, start with the basics. And one thing I actually miss about commuting, yes, I said I miss commuting, is I listen to podcasts, I listen to books, I listen to so much stuff. And pre-COVID, I actually used to listen to Jeremy's podcast a lot, Jeremy Burroughs, the Leader Assistant. And some of my other favorite podcasts are, it's been a while, hang on, Tony Robbins, Lewis Howes. He has the School of Greatness podcast. And through that, he has over, I think he's past 1,000 episodes now over the last many years. But I was introduced to so many thought leaders through him, Rachel Hollis, Ed Milet, even Brenda Burchard. I started following him after I started listening to Lewis. So Lewis was really the root of a lot of my my favorite podcasts and seminars. I listen to Oprah's Super Soul Sunday. I think Brene Brown has one. So there's a lot of soulful content that I like. It's not all professional development. And then another one is John Maxwell. That's all management stuff. I love his accent. I could listen to him all day. That was great. Sometimes it's corny, but it's awesome.
I'm John and I'm your friend.
He's great. And then Jeremy's, which I mentioned. And so those are the foundations. That's the free stuff, right? I read a lot of books. I never stop learning, because what got you here, right? Whatever level you're at will not get you to the next level. You have to continuously be growing, because if you're not, people are going to pass you and you're going to be left in the dust. And that's may sound harsh, but it's true and something we need to hear. And so beyond that, because there's so much free content available, eventually you reach this point of saturation. I remember vividly on my coffee table, I had James Clear, Atomic Habits, sitting cracked open, because I read 10 books at a time and finish maybe 2, and then moaning that. And then Rachel Hollis, Either Wash Your Face or Stop Apologizing. I forget which one it was. And they both were talking about habits, rewards, and cues. And I was like about to pull my hair out. I was like, if I read the same message again, I'm going to scream. And this was, by the way, while I was writing my book. And I was like, okay, universe, God, spirit, whoever you want to call it. I was like, I get it. Right? So you reach this point of saturation, and it's like, it's the same message. It truly is the same message, whether it's Tony Robbins, Oprah, Rachel Hollis, me, because I'm in that, I'm kidding. But it's the same message. It's just a different messenger, because every single one of us receives messages differently. We process them differently. It could be from a 5-year-old, it could be from an 80-year-old. If you don't have some sort of rapport or respect with them, you're not going to receive that message. And so that's why it's important to continuously seek these different sources. So that's when I wrote the book. But anyway, content, keep consuming. But I find, right, because there's always only so much content you can consume, the most valuable, and I think this is the third part of your question, and it's about networking, and it's about being in, you can call them seminars, you can call them experiences, but there's only so many videos and courses I can watch, right? I love it, but how many courses do you have that you paid for that are unfinished? I probably have hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars, whatever. But when I'm actually in the room making those connections, or virtual these days, it's fine. You get exposure at a different level, because you can be as disciplined as the next person, but if you're not talking about it and having those interactions and then actually implementing what you've learned, how many of you finish the course but not implement it? If you don't do anything with it, it's worthless. And so you've got your courses, you've got your books, you've got your workbooks, you go through all the motions, but you don't do anything with it. It's a waste of time. And so going to these conferences and events, and that's why I continue to go, even if it's the same conference I've already been to, because Tony Robbins talks about repetition is the mother of skill. So I've listened to all of his CDs. The first UPW I went to, Unleash the Power Within, highly recommend. I remember sitting there and being the snarky person that I am at times. I was like, I've already heard this. Why am I here? What am I doing? And I was like, no, like repetition is the mother of skill. You have to constantly hear the same stuff. Yes, there's new stuff thrown in, and there's different stories, different outcomes, and things that resonate. But you've got to continuously train your mind, because otherwise you fall back into these patterns that are unproductive, unhealthy, whether it's shopping, eating, drinking, whatever. You've got to continuously train and strengthen your mind. Tony says, like, how do you build a muscle? That's a real question. How do you build it?
Got to work out.
You work out. Yes. And you got to stress it. Like if you continuously do the same 5 reps or 10 reps, you're not going to grow your muscle. You've got to continuously stretch it beyond. You do 5 one day, you do 10 the next day, you do 15, take a break, keep going, but continuously stress it, and then it's going to grow. But if you're just doing the same thing over and over again, you're not going to advance.
That's such a great correlation to the brain. I don't think we necessarily always think that. But you're right. Like we call it at my office, like the lizard brain, just kind of like being on autopilot and doing what's like most comfortable. And so when you are, that's totally what a poignant point, like the repetition, your brain needs that too, because your mind is just going to go to what's comfortable. And for some of us, it's like not having the most positive thoughts, or sometimes in our role, like imposter syndrome, that, like exactly like Whitney shared earlier about being in the meeting. Yeah, she was meant to be there. Exactly. That's so great.
So Kelsey, before you move on, and I touched on this before the recording, so y'all are going to hear it again, but this is for you, for the listeners now. So I am currently at an event with 100 CMOs. It's my company's annual sponsored women's empowerment event. And they're talking about the same stuff that we talk about. Obviously, they're talking about all the stuff that they work on. But then there's the intangible sessions. They're talking about confidence. They're talking about imposter syndrome. You just mentioned that, Kelsey. That's a real thing. And so you work with these high-powered executives, but at the end of the day, I want you all to recognize they're humans too. They have that inner dialogue that doesn't shut up. They have that inner dialogue that you would not be friends with, but they talk about it. They recognize it. They are used to it. They acknowledge it, and then they move on. They don't stay there. They don't take that voice home at night. I mean, yes, they do, because it's in their head, but at the same time, they recognize they are not their thoughts. They are not their voices. They are not the stories that they tell themselves. They recognize it's not real. And so you can too.
Oh, that's so good. That's a great one for the listeners. Thank you for sharing that again. I love your Tony Robbins stuff that you've been kind of off topic from the book, but it does come up in your book often. So you started that a few years ago, and then now you've been an avid part of his organizations. You've done pretty much most of his trainings, or a good majority of them.
All but one.
All but one. Wow, that's very cool. I would love to learn a little bit more about that if you ladies are open to it as well.
Absolutely. So I've been to many of the EA trainings, a lot of them that you see advertised and see linked out, and I'm so grateful for all of them and highly recommend. And if you're looking for something beyond the EA realm, because we can all learn productivity, all this stuff, but what's not talked about in the EA realm or any conference really is we all have baggage. We all have our stuff. Right? And you may be going through it now. It may have happened when you were 2, when you were 7, when you were teen. You may be holding on to resentments directed at your father, your mother, your spouse, your brother, your sister, your grandfather, whatever. We all have stuff, and it comes with us. I didn't bring my props, but so you walk around and you've got this backpack full of stuff on, and then you just, every instance that happens to you, you put it in your backpack and you carry it around, and that's how you show up. And you may think you're this glowing professional in everything that you do, but you're not. You carry that backpack. And so going to these events, and it's called Unleash the Power Within. Really think about that for a minute. Like, we all have this inner power, but we don't tap into it. So many of us hold on to these resentments and this baggage. And Tony talks you through a lot of the psychology that's there. Every single one of us is programmed. We were brought up a certain way, and the way we were brought up shapes our rules, our values, our beliefs, even our vocabulary shapes how we show up today. The thoughts we think, the language we speak, every single experience you've had has brought you to this moment. But imagine if you could work through all of that and remove each of these instances, like, oh, this happened. Thank you. Like, thank it, acknowledge it, and then leave it where it is. You don't have to bring it with you. Carrying around baggage is a choice. It is an absolute choice, and it's one that you can choose to remove. And so he walks you through, I think UPW is a 4-day process. It's his point of entry program. It's the most inexpensive thing you can do. And he now offers virtual. I don't work for Tony. I don't get commission on any of it. And it's one of the most powerful experiences and gifts you can give yourself. And so a lot of people used to say, I can't afford it. It's too expensive. The flight, the hotel, the hours, blah, blah, blah. You know, there's so many objections as to why you can't go. But he built a $9 million studio in West Palm in partnership with Zoom to host these events, which now have anywhere from 20 to 40,000 people, just creating that transformation around the globe for themselves, because that's so important. So if you get the opportunity to do it, I highly recommend it. Full disclosure, it is not a 9 to 5 conference. The man is insane. He starts at, let's say he starts at 8 a.m., goes to 2 a.m. Just be prepared. It's a level of exhaustion mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, but it's designed specifically to do that, for you to crack open and unleash the power within. So.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I really wanted to say, in your book, thank you so much for how open and vulnerable you were about your story, and like how that story led to where you are today. I don't know that everyone would be as vulnerable and like talking about like a career book. So I really, really appreciated that. And I think it was very relatable for me, very certain topics.
Yeah.
And again, I think it goes to what you're talking about. The Tony Robbins stuff is like, handling that baggage. Almost when you were saying thinking it and releasing it, I was thinking of Marie Kondo. So you just, or
Yeah.
the magic card, getting rid of your baggage that way. I thought that was lovely. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. That's great. I really enjoyed that part of your book as well.
Yeah. And it was terrifying to share. It was uncomfortable. And at the end of the day, like what you learn in these seminars with Tony or otherwise is we think we're all different and unique. And I got news, we're 99.9% the same. We have the same skeletal system, muscular system, blah, blah. The only thing that differs is the DNA. Sometimes there's some physical differences, but we all have these thoughts, these frustrations, this anger, but we also have the capacity to love beyond our wildest dreams and to be able to give and grow and just impact the world in infinite ways. But unless you're able and willing and make the choice to free to free yourself from all that holds you back, the choice is yours. And it's an incredible gift when you do it.
It's amazing. So powerful. Yeah. Do you ladies have any questions you want to add before I move on to another one?
I would love to ask, when you feel like you don't have enough time, Maggie, and you're trying to develop yourself and up your skills and, pour into yourself so that you can be, the best support person. How do you navigate that when your job is already demanding and maybe family life is demanding? I do understand the concept of, hey, making this a priority, but sometimes it's really difficult to make that shift. And I would love to hear if you've had seasons like that and how you navigated making the training for yourself and pouring into yourself a priority.
So training, that's kind of the thing I default to. People sometimes default to alcohol, chocolate, shopping, whatever. Like training was my numbing initially several years ago. I just threw myself into it because I didn't want to deal with my stuff. I was like, so I'm going to grow and I'm going to show you. And it created a sense of significance. It's like I've been to all these trainings. Look at me. I mean, I didn't post about it, but I was like, yes, it made me feel really good. And so today it's less about training, but you want me to get really vulnerable here? Fine, I'll do it. The thing I struggle to make time for myself now. I'm better now, only within the last month or so, but the COVID-19 is real. And by 19, I mean the lbs, the pounds. And so I used to practice yoga 5 days a week, like all the time. I was in the best shape of my life. My husband and I were avid yogis, and then COVID, and it just went. The last thing I want to do is work out on a screen. And I don't want to say I'm not a runner, because that's like creating a limiting belief, but I don't like running. I don't know. If I don't have a brick and mortar to go to, it wouldn't happen. And I love to eat and I love food and I'm getting away from the question, but making the time for yourself. It's Scott, that's my husband. And he and I read a meme recently, like in anything, whether it's training, working out, spending time with your other half, making the time, right? Because we all put our job first, unfortunately, most of us. I'm sorry, Scott, but it's nobody's going to save you. You've got to save yourself. And that's really what it comes down to. Like you can say it's difficult to work out, it's difficult to go to training, it's difficult to find the time. And I don't have 3 kids running around at home. Hats off to all you moms out there. So I can't relate there, but it's truly making the time. Is it getting up earlier? Is it the 15 minutes you're doing your makeup? Throw on a podcast, right? Like Tony talks about net time, and it's not enough time. And if you don't have net time, whether it's 10 or 15 minutes here, you don't have a life. And I do know that we all have 15 minutes a day. So it doesn't have to be working out. Maybe it's meditating. Maybe it's a moment of silence. Maybe those things that you find monotonous, instead, be grateful for the moments, right? Like dishes. I used to get really annoyed, but if you train your mind, like, oh, these are moments of peace and quiet, where you can actually calm your mind and you're not getting 1,000 pings, or maybe you are in the other room. But it's training your mind to recognize those moments. Like I used to get pissed off commuting. Now I love it. I'm like, yes, give me my commute. What can I listen to now? But everything we do is a choice. And how you respond, how you react is a choice. And you're creating that reality.
Stephanie, if I could just add to that, if you look at time like money, because money you can always get back, time you can't,
Yeah.
then you make better decisions like how you spend it. I don't know if you're familiar with Jeremy Burroughs, but he has this great ideal week calendar that I just live by. And what I did with it, it was like I started out with there's 168 hours in this week. If I'm working 9 hours a day, then I'm subtracting 54 hours from that. If I want to sleep 8 hours a day, I'm subtracting that. So then what's left remaining? How am I spending that? Because that's really what you're doing with time. You're spending it. And then literally, if like she said, if you can carve out 15 minutes somewhere, put it on the calendar.
Yeah.
If it's reading a book, listening to it, that is the only way it happens.
Yeah. And we all know this better than anyone. If it's not scheduled, if it's not in the calendar, it doesn't exist.
I agree. I think for so much of my life, I spent a lot of time giving myself grace, like, not being too hard on myself. However, I resonated with so much of the book because I felt like that performance kind of validated me, that continuing to, become better at something gave me some validation. But on the flip side of that, I can be very, very complacent. And that has been that's like a counseling session. Like I have to deal with, where is this brick wall that stops me from going to the places I truly feel like I want to go? But then I war with myself saying, well, if you really want it, you would figure it out. And then it becomes like what you shared in the book, kind of almost a negative talk where it's like, well, how come you can't? And so those things are very helpful. I have not done the ideal week. So I thank you for sharing that, Tracy. I'm going to check that out. And I am trying to build those habits of using, all various times, laundry time, whatever, trying to build on those habits to ingest things that will build me up. So I appreciate that feedback.
Yeah. Another thing I'll share. So you get so caught up in the doing and the doing and the producing, and there's always more to do. There's always more to give. And at some point you reach this breaking point where you become complacent, right? You give 150%. I got news. Nobody's going to pay you 150% of your comp unless you get overtime. So some of the larger orgs, the hats off to you folks, but most of us don't get that. And so if you're giving 150% every single day, but you have other endeavors that you want to pursue. So somebody well-known within the community, I rave about this person all the time. I won't share their name since it's on the recording, but this person said to me, like, Maggie, you give 150%. What if you just gave 100? What if you went and finished your book? Because I took forever to finish my book. And I was like, what do you mean give 100%? He's like, even 95. What if you you're still going to perform? You're still going to 95% still going to be an A. What if you did that? I'm like, can I do that? What? And so I used to work 12 to 14 hours a day. And for what? Nobody told me to do that. Nobody thanked me for that. Granted, I didn't even talk about it. And I was just a miserable wretch. And I got really clear. I was like, wow, I can give 120%. I can give 95%. And that became my norm, because if you continuously give 150%, they're going to expect 200% out of you. And they're going to give you another executive. They're going to give you this. They're going to give you, and by give, I mean, you're going to get them. And you probably aren't going to get an increase that's commensurate with the level, with the new workload. So back off the accelerator, because nobody asked you to do that.
Yeah.
And it allows you to pursue other things that you want to pursue. And maybe it's doing nothing. And by nothing, I mean just chilling. Maybe it is scrolling, maybe it's reading. But give yourself that grace, not the complacency, but the grace and the space to pursue stuff that's related to you.
That's really good. I love that, because I feel like so many of us have so many passions outside of our 9-to-5 job. Well, they're not really 9 to 5 anymore, are they? And so it's like finding that balance of like, when can I do these passions that really like fill up my cup, like you were saying, Stephanie, to be able to then to, give to your executives or your team or whatever. So it's really good points.
Yeah.
One big thing in your book that I have really felt this week is the idea that like your feelings or become your thoughts, or your thoughts become your feelings, how they're kind of integrated. And we've had a very political week here in California, but just everything that's going on in the world, you kind of get sucked into it. For me, I feel like I had to really like limit what I'm like looking at news wise or whatever. And almost throughout like this past, 2 years, where starting in.
Yeah.
With COVID, it's like, how can you keep your mental health safe and like not have your thoughts go down, oh my God, the world's ending, California's on fire, or the East Coast is flooding, or, you know, all these crazy things. And just get like so wound up in that. So yeah, I love that you really kind of dress that in your book too, because it's so important for you as like a healthy human.
And I would say, like, even watching the news, that's a choice. You're making a conscious, well, maybe it may be unconscious, right? You're just so on autopilot. But I don't watch the news. I get pop-ups and notifications and the significant stuff, like things that are going on. But I'm not consumed by it, because news stations are not paid to show positive stuff, right? So you're getting this negative feed consistently. And I know people that watch it every day, they read it every day. It's like, oh, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna watch the news. I'm like, okay, I'll pray for you. But it's a conscious choice, and you get to decide what you feed your mind. Even on Facebook, LinkedIn, people are like, why do you follow me on Instagram? I'm like, I follow inspirational stuff. I don't even follow my friends, right? I don't go on there anyway, but I intentionally curate my feed. Facebook, LinkedIn, I'm following inspirational, positive, financial related stuff, anything that's going to help me bolster who I am and show me, where did my screen go? Just help me get to be where I want to be, or become the person that I want to become. And so watching news, it's nice to be current, but get current and then leave it there, because news cycles, they come and they go, and nothing's permanent.
Absolutely.
I have to agree, because with the COVID stuff and the political stuff and everything, I was getting sucked into it.
Yeah.
And there's an old saying, and this is going to date myself, but garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yes.
So, you know, I was just like, I was up on the numbers all the time. I can tell you what day the numbers were at this height, and I realized I was driving myself crazy.
Yeah.
You know, and I've got, you know, I had to get off the social media. I mean, my husband sent me stuff on Facebook, and he's like, did you see my post? Yeah, no, I haven't seen Facebook today. So I should obligatorily log in, but I just stay away from the stuff, because, and I didn't even realize until like 2 days after Afghanistan happened that it happened, because I am so buried in the sand, because I just can't. Yep. You know, I just know that that's just going, everything else that you're worried about or stressed about, or whether it's health, whether it's whatever it is, life, you know, I just don't need to add to it. Exactly. You know, so I just absolutely garbage in, garbage out.
Well, I want to say, Maggie, thank you so much for joining us. I know you have a hard stop at 5:40, but thank you. It was a great conversation, and we all very much enjoyed your book.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much for having me. I have one ask, by the way, because I gotta practice what I preach. If you don't ask, you don't get. If you haven't already, Kelsey, I know you have, but for those of you on the call or listening, if you like the book, I would love for you to leave a 5-star review to help get it into as many hands as possible. And I'm competing with Jeremy, because Jeremy has 500 reviews.
Good one to compete with.
All right. Thank you all. Have a fabulous
Bye, Maggie. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Maggie.
Absolutely. Take care. Bye-bye.
Oh my gosh. Isn't she great? I love her.
Oh my gosh.
She's so
I was so surprised when I logged in and like, boom, there she, I'm like, what?
I'm so glad you said that, because I was just like, did I miss that?
I know.
Did they announce she was coming? I would have worn a t-shirt.
Like, right? I would have put like the makeup on and the eyelashes, and oh my God.
Like, I took all my stuff off. It's 8 o'clock in here.
I'll have another author in. I'll have it on the invite that we'll make it really clear.
That's hilarious. How interesting that it's such a small group tonight. Like that made it so special. Like, you know,
like an intimate time with Maggie Jacobs. Yeah. I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to be very professional. I'm like, oh my God.
I think that, look, miss our special guest. But it was awesome. It was awesome, Kelsey.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
That was great. Thank you.
Kelsey, thank you so much for coordinating that. Oh my gosh. that was such a surprise. It was like, I took a couple of screenshots. I hope you don't mind.
No, that's great. Actually, I was going to go back and take one to add to the Instagram page. So I'm trying to like build the group offline as well. So,
Yeah.
Do you want me to send you the photos that I
great.
screenshotted? Yeah, I'll be glad to.
So when we talked about our last book, Dare to Lead, I went down such a rabbit hole to try to find an assistant certified in it. And there's only one, and she's never responded to my LinkedIn. So yeah. So we got to find an admin in our group to get Dare to Lead certified.
Oh,
So
I couldn't make our last book club. And instead, in lieu of, because I had intended to come, so I got the book and was ready. In lieu of, we did it as a professional book at work, like right after. And I was like, okay. Man, I didn't know you could do that and get certified. Ooh, ding, 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 ding. No.
We could get certified in what? I'm getting excited.
In the Dare to Lead, in the whole leadership, that she like kind of spills out, like the being super open.
Rumbling with vulnerability.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rumble.
Yes.
Rumble, that word. I know we have a new learning and development person in my company, and I just got to meet her this last week. And I was like, okay, I just read this book. I'm really fired up about it. How do we get Brene Brown to come to our company?
I heard that. And if you don't ask, right?
Exactly.
You don't get.
And go. Yeah, I'm working on it. Apparently, she only comes to organizations that have a chief people officer.
Okay.
Like a really high HR person, which we're in the market for right now. And so I'm working on that first, and then I'm going to get Brene Brown. It's my long-term goal.
Do it, Kelsey.
Putting it out there in case my work sees this. I've already warned you guys. I'm working on Brene.
Wow.
I'm rooting for you.
Thank you.
I know a couple really super awesome chief people officers. So we'll talk.
Amazing. Yes. Connect for sure. That'd be great. So our next book is The Leaders Eat Last, I believe, by Simon Sinek. Yeah. I was going to do a poll for like books for next year. Do you guys think like a poll would work, or should I just have the groups and in suggestions and we vote on what the book of the month is? Do you guys have any preference?
I strongly support you doing what's easiest for you. Like, honestly, I think either way, serving it up is great. And I say, do what makes it, smooth on your side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the reality is we'll all learn.
Yeah.
And it's like, we may not recommend something, but you may recommend something. And then we're all like, she's the best thing since sliced bread. Like, I'd never heard of this book. So it's a win-win.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I don't want the work to be dumped on you, Kelsey, because I know that you've got your job and everything like that. And I don't want you to have to, be getting 1,000 emails from people with suggestions. And I don't want you to have to like put all the thought into the books and put them out there to be voted upon, because then that seems like the load is entirely on you.
It's not too bad. Like the Facebook group's great. I normally would have put it in there. And so it kind of just lives. Facebook I have to log into. I make myself log out every time. So I have to really decide I'm going to like be scrolling, which is kind of a Maggie tip that we talked about, right? So yeah, that's not too big of a lift, but thank you. I feel like the pattern we have right now, it's been like an EA-based book, a professional development book, and then an EA. I think that's maybe a good pattern to repeat into next year. And then maybe actually kick off January with Atomic Habits. I feel like, beginning of the year, good one to like start the year off.
Oh yeah.
Good habits and stuff. Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah, I agree.
Perfect. Yeah. Oh, Maggie's great. That's such a great book. I like reread it on Sunday just to get back into it. And I was just like so fired up for this week in the call with all of her content. And her, we didn't get to talk about it, but her asks for when you're negotiating, the ones that she has listed for a new role, like the VP level of stock, 30% bonus. I was like, yes, this is the goal, right? Long term was great.
Yeah. I think because we're often, not taught to go big or go home, right? Especially in our roles. I mean, if we were aspiring to move up and become a chief of something, or just venturing out of our actual support roles, maybe we would view it differently. But I feel like overall, the industry is still not teaching us that we can, and we deserve it. I mean, we earn it.
Yeah.
If you think about it too, the admin profession is 95% female. Mm-hmm. And so we have to make our voice heard. And I think that in recent years, with the Bonnie Lo Cramons and the Joan Burges and the advocates for the Lucy Brazier, the people who are advocates for the profession, you know, and getting IAAP out there and ASAP out there and everything. I think that the whole it's like turning a big ship, but the ship is in motion in the turn, you know, and I think that people are no longer seeing us as that 9 to 5 movie, like with Dolly Parton, where you just fetch coffee and then you get aggravated and hurt your boss, you know. They're seeing that it's a true partnership and that we add value, that we take the extra worry and the burden off your shoulders, right? And so we save them time, you know, which is the ultimate. And so you know, I think that the more we get it out there, the better it is for us. My dad asked me one time, are you ever going to go for a promotion? And I'm like, I love being an admin. He goes, but you're just an admin. I'm like,
Hey.
I just,
Yeah.
that was almost a parental abuse moment. I didn't do anything.
No, like
I have to confess, ladies, I have to confess.
No, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about the role. If like if someone's not in a world where they have admins or high level executives, like I've had to explain it to my mom what it is I do, because they have very different type of admin in her company, which is much, you know, not quite at the level of support we are. So it's like having to educate other worlds about it. So
yeah.
I was going to say, I love, and the reason I follow Phoenix Norman and Jeremy Burroughs is because I don't know about you guys, but I just find men approach this role so much differently. And I just glean so much from them. And when they talk about the compensation and making the asks and how to make the asks, you know, one of the things Phoenix Norman really touts is speak executive ease. So when you go to your boss, you know, have data and just really have a whole case that you're presenting about, this is why I deserve, this is what I have done, versus, you know, according to salary.com, people at my level should have, like, I'm annoyed just hearing myself say that. it's like, that's not going to make an executive make a decision on your behalf. And
Absolutely.
so I just love the male energy in this industry because it brings a whole different facet to it.
I love and I follow Jeremy Burroughs and I follow Phoenix on LinkedIn, but I haven't read any of his books. And so I get paid tomorrow. So that's the first thing I'm going to do is
we should add his book for early next year, because he's so like fire you up. He's great.
Hilarious.
Oh, it's like it's posted on LinkedIn. And I'm like, I love this guy. He drops the F bomb and woo, go.
Oh, no, he's real. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the EA Wears Prada was his first post that made me start following him. And it was just like everything after that. It was just like, okay, he's gay, so I can't marry him. But oh my God, can I marry him? Like, he is just perfect.
I love that.
Say like so many of the admins are women, and he's like, you guys are not advocating for yourself.
Exactly.
I can't do it all for you. He's got an excellent point with that. Yeah, we'll get him. We'll see if we can join us for one of our clubs next year. He'd be amazing. He's such great energy. I'll work with
you're gonna get the princess thing for me again.
Total fangirl.
Yeah. I'll give you a heads up. He's coming. He'll be ready. Yeah, he'll be suited and booted. So I'll give you a heads up.
That way I can do the makeup, put my eyelashes on.
That's the best.
Yeah. It's good energy to start the year. I can't believe we're like it feels like we're almost at the end of this year, with it already being the middle of September.
We're almost into the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Wow.
Almost feels like Groundhog's Day working remotely.
Oh yeah. I can't speak for anybody else, but like time like does not mean anything to me anymore. It's like
exactly. I a couple of weeks ago, we were sitting there watching TV one night, my husband and I looked at him and I go, thank God tomorrow's Friday, you know, and it goes like, he goes,
what?
Monday night.
Oh my God.
I'm like, oh, the longest dark week in history.
You were way. I had a something similar earlier this week. When I wake up in the morning, I check my calendar on my phone, because you just sometimes you forget if you have a very early meeting, and so I always do that. And for some reason on Tuesday, when I opened my calendar, it was actually on Wednesday's date, but I didn't catch that. And as I was looking, I know on Tuesdays I have an early morning, and I just said, oh my God, the meeting's not there. Did I miss the meeting? Where'd the meeting go? How did I blow the meeting? And I just kept, and for like a whole solid minute, I was freaking out, like, nobody said nothing. Oh my God, how did I do that? And it was just great. And then I took a second and I looked and I was like, oh man, you're not even on the right day.
What happens? Yeah. The sense of time is just so different now.
It is.
One of my coworkers is calling it the pandemic flux. Like, you're hitting, like, after extended period of time of being in a state of stress, like your brain is just like not wanting to function or have great recall with your short memory. So I'm like, yeah, that's great. What's going to be like next year? My God, if it's already this bad. So
that's why things like this are really important, because it connects us, even though we have to still be virtual, it gives us a connection outside of our sphere. Some of us have family, some of us don't. But even when you have your family, I mean, the monotony is very real. You're staying in the same four walls, and it gets easy to, order Uber Eats and not go out. It gets easy to stay in the house. I was in the house, and maybe a few weeks back, I stepped outside to let my grandsons go to the car. And as I stepped outside, I was like, oh, and feel the breeze and notice the sky. And I turned to my husband. I said,
sunshine thing.
Yeah, right. What is that? I turned to my husband. I said, I think I need to go out. I think we need to take a ride. And I felt this like sense of urgency and kind of despair, because it was like, you're living, but it's like this. So yeah, like, just like get out there as much as you can in a safe way. Right.
that's kind of my end of day ritual now, is taking my dog for a walk, and the weather's just starting to get a little crispier in the Bay Area. And so it's like perfect. And I'm just like, I'm lucky it's really sunny. And so it's just a great way to just kind of like decompress a little bit and not look at a screen for at least 10 minutes.
That's a great habit.
It's full lofty goals.
Right? We're starting small, like Maggie said, those 15. We're going to be 15 soon. Yeah, we're not there yet.
I took a screen break so I can go to my HOA meeting. I came back.
I love it.
Oh God. But today was also, and it's not like I'm glad that people are in the same boat, but the whole conversation from start to finish with Maggie and the struggles that we all tend to share and the vulnerabilities that we hide from people because, we want everybody to think we're strong. Well, if we're having a really bad day, we're human, right? And so listening to you guys and your guys' sharing, I'm like, oh my God, her too? Oh my gosh, I'm not alone, and so thank you very, very much because sometimes, I just think I'm going nuts, and it's comforting to know I'm not the only one. So thank you guys for sharing. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. I love that. We have way more in common. I'm a firm believer of that.
Just going to be that. Very true.
Not just our jobs, but
exactly.
No.
Well,
Unique
Kelsey.
world. Well, thanks again for joining such a great conversation with you ladies this evening.
it is. And Kelsey, I'll go ahead and I'll send you the 2 screenshots I got.